motion to authorize publication of legal notices and advertisement of a public hearing to be held on August 1st at 5:01.
Where are you reading that from? That would be the, so it's up on mine?
Let me see. See,
Look at
I,
that there.
well, I have to click in the button. See if you see it now.
I asked Bruce to.
We do almost everything at her house.
This is right. These chairs look like
You can't see. She's looking at it, but I don't know if she can read it.
maybe I have to, maybe you don't see it till I initiate the vote.
Because, and it was, I guess, one of the things is that Jody and they, and one of the comments
We're looking
was,
at
oh,
the
they talk to me.
repair pickups on a different.
And Katie,
Snake.
it's okay, I'm not going.
The main road.
And I, you know, I got,
It's best that.
I just,
The worst part about
It impacts the high school, junior high school across the street. And it impacts the electric system right across the street.
to it. I was like, jeez, come on. There she is. That's been a while.
For the property? Architect and engineering. It came in at like 5.
I said it works out okay because you're taller than Addison, so you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You're taller than him anyways.
Mr. McCauley,
Is Susie coming today or no?
You think so?
Susie
No.
Lover.
No.
Oh, okay. So she's not doing any presentation today?
I'm just doing what Mr. Merrill did last year.
All right. We'll call to order our school board special meeting for July 20th. Meeting is called to order. Welcome, citizens of Clay County. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to attend today's school board meeting. This meeting is our opportunity as your elected representatives to collaborate openly and make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and the education of our children in Clay County. If you wish to address the board, there will be an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. Please fill out a card, which you will find located in the back of the room, indicating the specific item number or topic you wish to speak about, and turn it in promptly. Your participation is welcomed and appreciated. Item number 1 on our agenda is to review the 2017-18 tentative budget for all funds. Ms. Legutko? Let the record reflect that the superintendent is at a training session and Mr. McCauley is filling in. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, is it on? Hello, can you hear me? Oh.
He's gonna fix it for you, hold on.
Oh.
Button. Okay. Thank you. I'd like to, the presentation that was sent yesterday, please disregard. This is the most recent presentation. As far as the budget, I wanted to start off saying that today's meeting is primarily to obtain your approval to advertise the millage rates and our tentative budget for 2017-2018.
As of today, these are the numbers that we have. It is tentative, it will change between now and September. There are still some changes that need to occur, accounting adjustments that need to happen. Our debt service, the state has not released those figures yet, so it is not reflected in this budget. And those are just a few of the items that is not in this budget today, but will be in the final budget.
Before you start your presentation, how would you like the board to ask questions today? As you touch on each item, or when you finish each section, or do you want us to wait until the end? We don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but we will certainly have questions.
No, I think it's best as we're going through it.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good, thank you.
Is this meeting being televised?
I'll ask. Chris, it seems we're getting texts that the meeting's not being streamed.
No, we had an issue with YouTube. Its channel got reported for harassment.
What?
It's a public forum,
So we are not going to be televising or streaming this meeting.
so we're televising and recording.
So it's on Comcast only, and it's not streamed on the computer.
Not at the moment.
Will it be?
Jeremy's on the phone with YouTube right now.
Tell me again what you said about YouTube.
You need to come to the microphone. Thank you.
YouTube got our channel got reported for some reason, and they do. If you get reported by a random person, they'll ban your account. Look into it, and if it was justified, it stays banned. If not, they'll unban it. So Jeremy is on the phone with YouTube right now.
You mean to tell me that YouTube banned the Clay County School District?
Yes, ma'am.
That ought to be newsworthy.
And it was reported for harassment?
That's what the email said.
Dear Lord.
So
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Let us know when it's being streamed, please.
Yes,
Thanks, Chris. Sorry, Ms. Legutko. Dr. Legutko, please continue.
I think I need a battery in this
Chris?
caption. He's looking for a
Oh,
battery.
we're starting off
I mean, you
just-
do,
No, this
we
is
were-
a continuation of our last meeting, if you remember. We had nothing but
Start like
technical
this.
problems.
So,
We need to
Oh, okay,
resolve this.
It's working, it's working.
Great.
Again, we're going to start the presentation. Of course, the representative, our board members, and our superintendent, Addison Davis. The next slide represents our schedule or our planning budget timeline that is used in order to determine our budget. As you can see, our trim calendar started Monday, July 3rd. There are specific timelines within that schedule that we must meet, and therefore this is one of our first meetings, which is to obtain the approval to advertise the tentative budget and the advertisement for capital outlay, and to set the public hearing for July 27th. No, I'm sorry, August 1st. The advertisement will be in the Clay Today on July 27th, that Thursday. And of course, the next, after that public hearing, there will be a final public hearing, which will have the final numbers of our expenditures from the prior year and our projected revenue and expenditures for the 17-18 school year on September 7th, 2017. Okay. Okay. This slide really, primarily what I'd like to share with you in this slide is to let you know that, of course, our millage rate pretty much went down. What that means is in the prior year, our total millage rate was 6.762. The required local effort was 4.514. prior year. Current year, it's 4.190. There is a reduction there. The .748 is set by legislature, of course. It's statutory, so there were no changes this year. And the 1.5, similar to the basic discretionary millage that is set by statute. There were no changes to the legislative language, therefore it remains the same. The only change was the required local effort, which really, as you can see, it went down. What that means is that the district will have a reduction in our taxes. Last year we generated approximately $47 million. This year we will generate $46.7 million. But you notice the comparison between the taxable values. They went up slightly. So you would think that we would increase, right? We did not, because of the wisdom of the legislature and, of course, reducing our required local effort. So not only did they reduce our required local effort, they also reduced somewhat our FEFP dollars, our state dollars. Even though they said we earn dollars, we receive $100 more, that's not a true statement. I just want to put that out there. It's about $32 more per FTE student we received in Clay County. Okay? But the purpose of this slide...
Dr. Legutko, I have a question. So this slide and the amounts that you're showing us, are we having to advertise a tax increase or decrease this year?
You are not going to advertise a tax increase. We are just required to advertise a budget hearing.
Okay.
And you'll see that in the ad.
But when we do our millage and our rollback and all that, what will we be advertising, an increase or a decrease?
We won't be, the requirements for trim is if you have a tax increase, that's when you advertise. If you do not have a tax increase, you only advertise a public hearing.
All right, thank you.
Yes. So as we talk about this slide, and this is pretty much what the whole purpose of this meeting as it relates to the advertisement, we want to talk about the rollback rate. The next slide will sort of give you an explanation of the rollback rate, but before I get to the next slide, I just wanted to show you that for the purpose of the taxpayer out there, for the 17-18 school year, if you had a value of about your taxable, your assessed value for your property, say it was about $125,000, you take away the homestead exemption, you'll be taxed on $100,000. Well, last year you paid about $676.20 per $100,000. Next year or this year, based on our millage rates, you will experience a $32.40 credit or savings. Now that is with the assumption that your value remains the same. Of course, if your property increases, then it goes along with the increases. So. This slide really sort of gives you an explanation of the rollback rate. That rollback rate is really a calculation that's used, and the primary purpose of that calculation, or the primary purpose of me speaking about it, is to alert the taxpayers, our public, that the increases, and it's primarily for increase in millage. If your millage rate increases, it's not the directive of the local tax assessor's office. It is really the requirement of the taxing agency. And the reason for the rollback is to let everyone know, if you were having a tax increase, what would that percentage be to roll back so that you can pay or experience the same taxable tax bill. For instance, and this is a simple explanation, if you paid about $650 for your tax bill, and that's what you paid last year, you've got an increase for the following year, and your tax bill is now $675. What would that percent rate be to roll back so that you can only pay the $650 in taxes? So that's the whole purpose of the rollback. In our world today, in our rates, we are experiencing a reduction in our taxes or in the tax bill. Therefore, we would not want to use the rollback rate because you'll be increasing your taxes because you would want to pay, for instance, the 670, what is it that I showed you? We would have to determine what is the rate that we would need to, I don't even think it's rollback, increase to make your taxes the $676, right? Okay, so that's basically the reason for the rollback rate, to explain that to the public. Okay. Okay, this is just a simple slide that reflects what our tentative millage rates are. Required local effort will be at 4.190, generating about $46,715,185. Basic discretionary, the 0.748 will generate about $8.3 million. Capital outlay, a 1.5 mil will generate about $16.7 million. Total $71.7 million to operate our district. And again, I just placed the total millage rate to be levied is less than the rollback rate of 0.47. And that's really a negative because we had a reduction. Okay, so, oops, sorry. Okay, this is pretty much the advertisement that will appear in the newspaper. It is a comprehensive budget summary of all our funds, the general fund, our special revenue, debt service, and capital outlay. We will advertise a budget of about $389,412. Of which $297,072,373 is our general fund budget. And of course, it identifies what our millage rates, tentative millage rates are. That's one of the advertisements. The other advertisement is the notice of tax for school capital outlay. This ad is required to identify the specific activities that will be spent using the $1.5 million. And as you can see, there's a listing of several, and this slide is broken up into 3 slides, I believe. There's several projects that are being funded out of this funding source. As you can see, we've got the maintenance and renovation and repairs, our motor vehicles. Part of these funds are used to support our ERP system, equipment, technology for the classroom, repayment of our COPS issue, debt service, which is our debt, and of course our insurance premiums for the district facilities. And of course, it's advertising that we will have a public hearing on August 1st. The next ad is, of course, an amendment to our capital outlay budget. If there were changes to the ad that was presented in the prior year, we are required by TRIM to identify those changes and place an ad in the newspaper to notify the public of those changes. And of course, the final would be the notice of our budget hearing. Had we had an increase in our millage, we would be advertising an increase to their taxes, a notice of tax increase. So, okay. So the next part of the presentation will really, do I have any questions on the advertisements? Thank you. Okay. So the next part of the presentation is really to go through the details of our budget, the comparison of prior year, and of course what we're projecting for next year. Keep in mind that we're looking at budget versus expense. So there'll be gaps between the different categories that I'm speaking of, only because budget is what we expect to spend. The expenditures that you'll look at are actually what we spent. Okay? Okay, so the first slide really represents our revenues. As you can see, it's broken down with local and state revenues. What I'd like to say about this slide really is hold on. Oh, yes. The local revenues are, again, we're going from 56 million to 55 million, and I'm looking at the 16-17 and 17-18. And the unaudited final are those numbers that have not been audited by the Auditor General. So therefore, it is what we ended up our year with collections as far as revenue and what we collected. So as you can see, we collected about $52 million in property tax. For next year, we're projecting about 52.9. I will say that this year we did get very close to above the 96%. School districts are required to budget only 96% of the required local millage, required local effort dollars. So in the past, we have not collected 95%, and but this year I will tell you we did go above the 96, almost close to 100, but we didn't get 100. But it was a good sign that, you know, we're moving in the right direction as it relates to revenue coming in from from our property taxes. So and of course, as you can see, it's fairly the same, so there's no increase, and part of that number is based on what the state has certified as our millage rate. So it will generate about $52 million. The other thing, the other area that I would like to point out to is the difference between the state revenue and from 16-17 to 17-18. You'll notice it's about 207 million versus the 213. What's in the 207 is the McKay. If you'll remember, throughout the year, the state gives us counts, or it's based on our student enrollment, actual student enrollment, FTE. Now, what we start off with is a projection. Once the projection is out there, that's what we've got to base our budget on. Then as we go through the year, there are different counts. There's 4 counts throughout the year that the state adjusts our revenue based on those numbers. And one of those is a huge impact, which is the McKay scholarships. And that number is not given, it's recorded in our FEFP, but it's not dollars that we're receiving. The state keeps those dollars. So if you'll notice there's a difference between the 207 and the 213, it's because that is what we collected. This is what I'm projecting, and I cannot take out McKay as of right now. I have to wait till the state tells me that, okay, based on the data that we've received from your district, you have X amount of kids that took McKay scholarships, therefore you will not earn these dollars. Does that make sense?
Dr. Legutko, I have
Yes.
a couple questions on this page.
Okay.
From the first column to the second column, and then looking at the third column, the one that says rent, and then the one that says indirect cost rate federal projects.
Yes.
And then down lower, there was the workforce development.
Yes.
I was looking at the unaudited final, and then looking at next year and last year, and on those 3 things, I just wondered what makes it so different.
Okay, let's start with grants. Grants is, it's a combination of several local participation. So there could be extra dollars coming in from a local agency that wants to help the district out. And those dollars come in as we receive them. So we can't predict who's going to give us dollars. Now, for 15-16, it's about $83,000. I don't have the details in front of me, but I can definitely find out what makes those up. But it's really participation from outside agencies or other organizations that provides us with opportunities, grants.
I mean, I just wonder, because next year you've just got tentative 24,000.
That's correct, because I don't know what to expect. I'm trying to think of a local vendor that may want to partner with us, and they'll give us a grant for maybe a grant for growing vegetables. That's and we don't know what that could be. It could be 0 to 100,000, 200, 300,000. But because I don't know that, I can't budget. So what happens is throughout the year, when I bring you budget amendments and financial statements, you will see those increases as it goes up. And then this, of course, is the final. If you, I don't have it with me, but if you look at last year's, you'll see that number is also very small, because I cannot predict what grants we will get in.
And the other two that
the indirect cost rate for federal projects, the reason for the change is that those are those federal grants that we receive, and there's a portion of the federal grants that we are required to, there's an indirect cost rate that is applicable to those federal grants. The fluctuation is based on what the state gives us. So for instance, Title I is one of those grants. 2 years ago, we could have received about $2 million. This is just an example. I know we receive about maybe $8 million, I think. About $8 million in Title I. See, that's a good example. But the next year, we may have only received $6 million, because that's all the feds gave the state to give to us. And then the following year, it's based on projection. I believe the amount we may get maybe about 7.5, or So based on that information, I am predicting that is what we will receive. So based on the grant itself, say it's $8 million, our rate might be 3.5%. That amount is then charged to the grant that's part of operating the grant in the system, and it's recorded in our general fund dollars.
But you're guesstimating on the conservative side.
Correct.
For next year, too.
Absolutely, yes, because I would rather increase our revenue than at the end of, as we go through the year, decrease it, especially if we've already appropriated all of the funds and they're spent. It's very difficult to collect it back.
What does this rent include?
This particular one?
Yeah, I mean, it went up so much, I just wondered what was the tentative.
You're talking about the indirect cost rate?
I'm talking about I'm talking about rent, R-E-N-T, after indirect
Oh,
cost
rent.
rate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the rent are those that, where the schools are offered to the local Y and those other, the YMCA or to
Churches.
Yes, and they pay a portion of that rent.
And I just wondered, because it was budget at the audited actual 228, unaudited final 385, and then next year you've got 200,000.
Yes,
So you're
that's
really
conservative.
being conservative.
Yes, I am. Because again, I'm not sure who may or may not rent our facilities. It's not a confirmed, as you can see. You can clearly see the difference between 15-16 and 16-17. It went from 228 to 385. So that was a positive for us. But if it had gone in a different direction, it would be a problem for us. So when I work with the budget, my goal is to build it as reasonable and as conservative as we can. And if there are adjustments that can be made throughout the year, obviously we will do that.
It'll be to help us, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
In the tentative budget for 2017-18, the total state revenue you were talking about, the fact that that includes the McKay Scholarship, approximately how much do we usually have to budget for McKay?
About
Even though we-
$2.5 million.
Okay, so of that 213, about 2.5 would be,
McKay.
Okay.
In addition to that, I will tell you, because of the final legislative action, the district experienced about a $3.9 million increase overall. So, overall, the total, because it includes McKay, the overall impact to the BSA being going up for the increase of approximately $100, which is not true. The district experienced about $3.9 million additional revenue this year.
Can you do my last question on workforce development?
Yes.
I was just looking at the difference on that.
Right, yes, and those, again, workforce development, that was the, again, based on the revenue that is expected, that is the amount that we spoke about with both the person in charge of this program as well as the state. This is what they gave us. They told us this is the amount you will receive this year. So that's the allocated amount at this time. Now, again, it will change as we go through the FEFP calculation throughout the year. But this amount is what has been directed to us from the state, saying
the
this
state
is your
gave us-
allocation at this time.
So the state gave us less in that,
Right.
among other things.
I think that's that cut in the additional CTE dollars that we were getting, that we talked about with the legislative update.
It needs to just be in the record.
Yeah, because it hurts.
Yes, it does. Any more questions? Right? This is this is our federal revenues, and of course, there's really not a huge impact to the federal dollars. The only difference is our Medicaid. Our Medicaid, our collections were about $1 million. So as far as budgeting, I only budgeted about a $1.1 million to accommodate that adjustment. The reason 15-16 is so high was typically we will collect 4 quarters of Medicaid funding. That year we recorded 5 quarters. So we had an extra quarter in there that happened within the 12-month period.
You had 5 quarters.
I know, you don't have 5 quarters.
obviously-
You have 4 quarters plus
I'm not even
1
going to
quarter.
pretend to understand that.
I realized what I just said.
I'm sitting here thinking, are we supposed to look intelligent like we know what the heck you're talking about?
That's that Common Core math.
That's right. It's our new accounting way. No, there
Try
were
again.
5 collections within the 4 quarters. How's that?
Okay, that's better.
That makes more sense than 5 quarters in a 12-month period.
I was sitting here thinking, they're all looking like they understand. Nobody could understand
I knew.
that.
I was looking at her face, and I said, okay, something's not right. What did I say?
Yeah, you could kind of read our face like.
Trust me, we need these kinds of smiling moments in this kind of presentation.
Break the monotony.
Okay, no, I'm that's the new math. You didn't know that? Okay, so that's the reason why we collected 5 payments within the 4 quarters. Okay, I'm going to move on. How's that?
Good idea.
Okay, this is a pie, not the one to eat.
We're going down.
You started me off here. No, I'm just kidding. This is just the pie chart that reflects our revenue collection. The purpose of this chart is really to share with you that the state, in order to participate in the state FEFP program, to generate $213,182,968, 78% of our revenue, the district has to provide about $55 million in local dollars in order to generate the $213 million. The others, of course, are the other financing sources, which is other revenue sources coming in from the other areas like capital, transfers in, those types of things. And where the estimated revenue is about $274 million. Okay, all right. Here's the best chart ever, I think. But again, our beginning fund balance, July 1, we started the year off with about $22 million, ending this year with $22 million. Of course, part of that 22 is 11 million, and I'm looking at 16-17 school year. So we ended the year with about $22.7 million in fund balance. Part of it that's unassigned is about $11.3 million, which is about a 4.27% unassigned fund balance. Moving that up to the new year, we're projecting moving the $22,763,476. We're predicting we'll receive about $270 million in revenues. We're predicting we'll spend about $277 million, which leaves us with about $15.5 million excess. The 4.081 are transfers in that will come in from the capital projects and our inventory. It will leave us with an ending fund, I'm projecting this, that'll leave us with about a $19.6 million fund balance, of which 12.1 will be is projected to be unassigned and at a 4.5%. Any questions on this slide? Good, I'm going to move on. And again, this is just a small chart that reflects our fund balance history on where we were, where we are, and where we're projecting to be. Which again, we're in the upward swing right now, so which I believe is good. Okay, now we're going to get into the expenditures. And pretty much we went through most of these expenditures at the budget update. So really there were the changes that occurred. Why is it like that? Yeah, the changes that occur are changes to the New Year's budget as a result of the millage rates and the certification of those millage rates and what the state were finally giving us, or what they are predicting to give us in 17-18. This is just a standard slide that just shows you how our general fund dollars are used. Again, it primarily is used at the schools. We try to, spend all of our dollars at the school, but of course there are times when it's located at the district office. But the primary reason and purpose of these funds is to support our schools as best as we could. Okay, I'm going to move on. And again, the way our budget is presented is through different categories, where you've got salaries, which is in the 100 group, benefits 200, purchase services in the 300. 300 is made up of several areas, which is licenses in 360, 330 is travel, 390 is other personnel, other purchase services. Let's see, 330, 390, 360, 370 is communications. That's where all our phone bills and those types of things are paid. So those are the different categories of expenditures within the different divisions, because there's the function codes that identify where the money is being spent. Oops. This chart really gives you a broader picture based on the function. The functions are the divisions, the different divisions that are in the entire budget. So as you can see, there's instruction, which is all of our teachers, all of the expenditures as it relates to instruction. 6,400, which is your instructional staff training. That's primarily where all of our expenditures for training is charged, but you have a multitude of object codes, 100, 200, 300, travel is 300, licenses, which is 360, all of those are in this whole numbers, all these numbers. So everything, but it's just by the function groups. The next slide is really a summarized version of the object codes.
Mrs. Studdard has a question, but
Oh, I'm
then I
sorry.
do too.
Go ahead.
On the last page. Okay, we ask this, I think, every year.
Probably the same
And
question.
I want you to explain, because someone's going to see it and say, what in the world is that? Would you please explain under Board of Education why there's an extra $2 million sitting there?
That amount is the terminal pay. And what I'll do is, as we get into the actual object codes, it will identify that $2 million. But you can see using no, this is not the best slide to look at. But as we go through the slide, I will explain it, and you'll clearly see what I'm explaining to you on that
Because I
slide.
know before you have said there's really nowhere else to put it.
Right.
But it makes us,
Right, and I understand that. What I did do this year, but I did create a district-wide cost center to identify those costs that's not related to the board. A lot of times, all our contracts, everything that's not attributed to just a division is placed under the board cost center. So it does inflate the board's cost center's budget. So what I did this year was really created a cost center specifically that's labeled district-wide expenditures.
But why can't that go
Because of the way it's showing, it has to be under the 7,100 because it's by function.
That
The-
cost center thing that you put is not under 7,100?
No, the cost center, it has all the different functions in there. So not only does it have the 9,000 cost center, which is the board's cost center, I have a 9,001 that I can quickly identify, well, this is not the board's expense, this is terminal pay. So that's the best I can do given the directive that I have using Red Book, or the state board accounting rules that we are supposed to abide by.
Do all school districts do that? And
Typically, yes. Typically, yes. They, it just depends. It just depends on where it's preferable to have it as a holding. I guess I could, if matters, I could add it to another, but it won't be identifiable as easily because it will get mixed up in all of the other expenses that there's a lot of traffic that goes on. And because of our system, it's difficult to pull that information out. So at the time being, the best I could do is actually put it in a different cost center to identify it. But what I'm planning on doing is creating object codes and cost centers and possibly project numbers and really try to see. I was told I could not take it out of 7,100 though. That's why the whole purpose all of us. But you can see though, as a budget, when we go into the 700, you will see the difference where at the beginning of the year, I started off with a $2-point-something million budget. But when you look at your expense, you'll see it's only about $300,000. Because what happens is throughout the year, there's accounting, there's journal entries that are done, or steps that are taken to move the expense once we know what it is, to actually move what it is to the appropriate line item that's being charged. So for instance, if a principal leaves the school district and there's some terminal pay that's attributed to that expense, I will take that value and make an adjustment and move it from where the money is sitting and move it up to cover the deficit that's appearing in that line item. So that's the way we've always done it. I shouldn't say it that way, I'm sorry. That's the way we have accounted for terminal pay. Now, I'm sure there could be other areas that I could look at to move, to look at, see how I can adjust the records to reflect. But again, everything that I do, I really reach out to my colleagues at DOE to make sure that what we're doing is the appropriate way
And
to
as
account.
long as we know that and someone from the public doesn't think we've just got a couple million that we're playing with, fancy trips.
Dr. Legucco, what is the increase, the $13 million increase in instruction?
Okay.
Last year it says it was 175 and you're projecting
Right, and it's
188.
188. And if you, again, this is expenditures
Right.
versus
Is the salaries included in instruction?
everything.
Okay.
Everything. You've got salaries, benefits, travel, contracts, everything that's attributed to the 5,000. So there's a lot of things that could be. It's I think our salaries might be up about $1 million or $2 million. Of course, there was a change in leadership. There's a change we had a whole new reorganization. So as a result of that, that could be attributed to the increase.
I think we had more teachers. I think we had more teachers because we had more students.
Correct. Not only that, of course, we're adding new curriculum. Remember, so that's part of it, and it's placed probably in some of it is in 5,000 versus the 6,200, where some of our instructional materials might be. So it just depends where it is budgeted at that point.
I think I need to interject here. Did I just hear you say that part of this 13 million was the new team that just came in? Because
No.
there
she said-
were some that were eliminated for the new.
Right, no, but the bottom line number could be impacted up or down. It's not the exact figure, but like I said, everything is in that line item. Anything that could have happened from last year to this year. So, for instance, we spent $175 million in that line item. We could have budgeted $185 million. But this is the expense versus what we would have budgeted at the beginning of the year, and then I have moved dollars to accommodate the appropriate cost of whatever it was, whatever that activity was. So this screen here really just gives you a broader picture of the overall expense that happened that year and what I'm predicting for budget as a tentative budget.
I personally would really like to see, and I know you don't have it right now, I'm not expecting it in this presentation, but as we get more firmed up numbers, I would like to see a breakdown of what we spent and what you're projecting to spend more on in the coming year.
Yeah. So let me make sure I'm clear. What you would like to see is what makes up the 175.
Correct. If you can highlight for us the increases between the 175 and the 188, because it sounds like it's a plethora of things, but maybe there are some that contribute a little bit more than others, so we can see where that extra money is going and coming from.
Well,
And that includes benefits, right?
yes.
And I'm going to assume part of that is
Healthcare,
health care for this year.
Yeah.
Because that was,
Well,
right.
the benefits portion is really, it did increase by approximately $1 million as a result of the retirement rate.
Right.
That is the purpose, the primary increase in the benefits at this point, is the retirement rate that increased from,
Before you move on, Ms. Bola, did you have another
I have
question?
just two areas that I'm not certain what they are or why they're as different as they are. Fiscal services, it's about halfway down, 7,500.
right, that's me.
And that's, okay. And that's, here again, is that one of those budgets that you
What
you
happened-
had a little bit at the beginning and you know that you're going to be moving that
No,
money?
what
or-
happened with fiscal services, and I can speak to that one, because that's my division.
Okay.
Fiscal services, in the past, a lot of our contracts were, again, loaded in the budget, in the board's budget. So this year, what I did, in order to eliminate or reduce that impact of a large budget sitting in the board's budget, is to move those down to fiscal services, because I knew those contracts were really related to my work. Those contracts such as the audit, the district-wide audit that is subject to, so that was a 7,500 function. It's not really a board's function.
Got it.
So our insurance premium, the company that we use is for insurance to process our insurance payments and things like that. That was a contract that was sitting in the board's budget, that it might have been under a different cost center, but it was under that function. So I needed to identify what is the correct function and where it really belongs.
Perfect.
So that's why there's that increase. And of course, I added about I took on three more positions in my division, so salaries are in there too. So there's an increase to that as
In the
well.
fiscal services, there's salaries.
Yes, yes. Everything here has salaries, it has benefits, it has travel, it has contracts, it has communication, everything. This is just a catch-all by function, by the divisions.
I'm with you, okay.
Yeah.
And then follow up to that, is that why then the administrative technology services reflects the opposite? It goes down from 1.2 to 600, 1.2
The
million.
reason for that one, and again, there's several, the reason for the 1.1 to the 681 tentative is that we have not budgeted for the instructional, the technology categorical that we will receive. It's about $1 million, and that's dispersed everywhere, but the primary purpose is to spend it in the 6,500. So it's split between the technology 82 and the 6,500. 6,500 is instructional, and the 82 is district other than instructional. So what happened is we did not budget for the technology money that's going to be received by the state. Typically, there's a plan that needs to be submitted before we can recognize it. There's a little bit of change in the law this year as a result of the legislative action. So we're working through that, and once we have the information on it, it will be loaded. So when you see this again, you'll see that my budget has gone up by, the appropriations has gone up by that much, about $1 million.
I have a question before you move on. So pupil transportation, have we budgeted for the 5-cent gas tax?
Oh, you missed
The workshop.
the workshop.
I talked to Ms. Kapelousas from the county, and our buses are not part of that.
Right, but our white fleet is. So how big is our white fleet? You know, we have lots of vehicles out there that are gonna,
There was an increase to the pupil transportation as a result of gas increase. You know, that's a standard that we've done where we'll increase it by a few percentage. So I don't know how many is on our wide fleet at this, you know, right in front of me, but I'm sure there is an increase there as a result of any fuel increases that we will experience.
I think in the educational facilities plan that Dr. Kemp sent us, wasn't there a line item where we got reimbursed for the gas tax, and it had spelled out it was for not only our yellow but our white, as
fleet
well.
also.
hmm Is that correct, Dr. Kemp?
Dr. Kemp, could you address that?
And I can, the gas tax, Ms. Bowl is absolutely correct. It's not applicable to the diesel fuel, but on our white fleet, we did take a look at that. It was a minimal number. Mr. Fitzpatrick, you have, I know maybe right off hand, you don't have the number. Yeah, it was very minimal as far as the cost for us for our white fleet. Our white fleet consumption is significantly less, of course, than
Right.
the yellow fleet.
Good, thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Okay. Again, this slide really represents it by a different perspective, which is just by the object code. It has every function in there, but it's the object code that identifies salaries, benefits, purchase services. So you can see for salaries, the increase is not as significant as we thought it was as we're looking at it from a function perspective. So it's just the way that you're viewing the document. The employee benefits will go up, as you can see, because as a result of the retirement rate. Purchase services, of course, went up because we added the charter school, the new charter school, about $2.5 million to that budget, as well as other contracts and things like that. So
is the $2.5 million for the new charter school, is that capital outlay dollars also, or?
no, the Clay County will not experience any impact from that requirement to set aside X amount of dollars for the charter schools out of our LCIF funds.
That's just operation. Okay.
Yes.
What about the other charter schools? How much overall do we send for the total of all charter schools? What will be going to all of them?
Oh, okay. Total for our charter schools, we'll be sending about $8.3 million this year, as opposed to last year we gave them about 5.8. The increase is as a result of St. John's Classical, which will be about $2.5 million.
Okay.
And what was the total for the, I guess, 4 of them?
4 of them, it's
Or 3?
Clay Charter Academy, OPPA, Florida Virtual, and St. John's Classical. It's $8.3 million. It's equivalent, generating about 1,137 FTEs. And again, this is projected.
Okay, and then the new classical will be what?
2.5.
And that includes the students who are part-time virtual, correct? Because I understand from the very complicated FEFP calculation that even if a child is in our schools for the full school day, if they take a virtual class in addition, we have to compensate Florida Virtual for that as well.
That's right. That's right. So the way the calculation works is that you have to have X amount of minutes. That's all you will receive. So if you have a 6-period day and a student is taking 5 periods in the regular traditional class and 1 period in a virtual, we only receive 5/6 of that revenue of that BSA, and the virtual receive the other 1/6.
But even if they take 6 periods and they take the 1, we still have to give them money.
We pay for it, but we don't receive the revenue.
Right, but we still have to, they still get a portion of the money.
Yes, absolutely.
It doesn't seem right to me. If they're taking additional, I mean, I get it if they're taking, but we aren't compensated, in my opinion, we're not compensated enough to even pay for the school day.
It's been
I try.
And it is a state requirement to follow up on that for students to take a virtual class
That's right.
of some sort.
Isn't that special, the way it just works out like that?
And they require it of us, but they don't compensate us for it.
Imagine that.
I know. I'm learning more and more about our wonderful legislature.
That's the wonderful world of recalibration.
Yeah.
And that happens in the 3rd and the 4th calculation.
Is that going to be another workshop, the wonderful world of recalibration? Or?
Oh, good one, Miss Moa.
Were there any other questions for Dr.?
I'll set aside a travel budget so you guys can go to DOE and sit in a workshop on
Well, we've got
recalibration
2
and
million to do
FTE projections.
We're still trying to figure out the rollback.
That is the most convoluted.
How about the
thing I've
5
ever-
quarters?
I know. That's a new one for us. All right, let's move along.
Okay, all right, yes. Okay, this is just a pie chart. As you can see, the purpose of this chart is really to identify the salaries and benefits that makes up the largest portion of our budget, which is now trending at 79% of our budget. It's going down. It's not 80.
And you said we're 78?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting there.
It's funny, I've been now, this is my 3rd budget year, and that number drops every year, Dr. Legatko.
I know.
When I started, it was like 82 or...
I know.
But the target drops.
True.
Okay. All right, these are the charts that really I believe is important. Well, they all are, but I believe this really gives a better picture of what's happening in those specific object codes. So you asked the question about the salaries. This slide only reflects salaries and benefits. So, and it identifies it by the function. It doesn't identify it by cost centers. So it just gives you an overall picture. So for instance, in the 5,000, we spent $152 million last year. We're projecting to spend about $155 million. It went up about $3 million. But if you look at our last year's budget, the difference between our last year's budget, what we started, and it's not on this slide, and I think as we progress into the next upcoming meetings, I may add more data to this. But the budget itself, compared to what we started off with, to what we're projecting in that overall, it's really about a $1.2 million difference from what we started off with last year, similar to now at this point in time. And it's in the scheme of the overall total budget, 1.2 is reasonable as it relates to what the staff allocation plan, the different changes to the different divisions, so that really is what I wanted to point out in these slides, is that you're looking at expenditures and you're looking at budget, and it's not apples to apples.
So this would speak to some of the increase that we saw then.
Right.
On that prior chart. Okay. And that makes up, if we're going from 152 to 155, so that makes up about 3 million of the 13 million.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And in the instruction increase, that $13 million increase, was that the new charter school as well? Was that reflected in that?
Yes, in the 5,000 function, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that would be a big chunk of it too.
Right.
So if we could just get a breakdown to see what that
Yes,
13
and I think we can do that.
Okay.
I'll have that ready for our next meeting. And as you and going back to one that I know really well is the 7,500. You can see where it went up by 1.1 million, which is in salaries. And really the increase is due to the 3 positions that I'm adding that I took on this year, as well as the increase to the retirement rate, because this is also benefits. Also included in all of these functions is terminal pay. So when we get to the 700 object, you'll see that the board's budget is low, but those dollars, the different dollars that we spent in terminal pay, is now scattered through this budget here, the expenditures here. Because at that time, now we know who exited the system, so therefore we can charge it appropriately to the right function and object code, right function code. Okay. All right, the next slide is the 300. The 300, of course, represents the other purchase services, which includes contracts, it includes travel, it includes software licenses, it includes communications. So you can see in 6,500, there's an increase from 660 spent to, we're going to 967. Well, remember I said leases, there are leases, which is a 360. So we are moving towards, instead of purchasing equipment, we're purchasing licenses. So the increase now will then shift from the 640s to the 360.
So can I ask a question on that? Would that be something, this is just a minor little thing, it probably is not a big bill at all, but would that be something like when we switch from Outlook to Google and the cost of that, does that fall in there?
It would be, yes, because the purchase of the software, which I believe it's the licenses that we're purchasing. So whatever that cost may be, it may have been reduced from not, it's Outlook we were paying a hefty price for.
Were we?
Google, I believe, is free.
Is it?
So, that would attribute it to some of the changes in there. But the increases is what we're moving from actually buying tangible equipment or tangible software or those kinds of things to now that license that you've got to purchase. And it's recognized under another object code, which is 360, which is Red Book accounting, basically. It's what we're required to account for.
Good.
What is community services?
That is on 9100. Those are those, I want to say it's not VP. It used to be VPK, but it's not anymore. VPK is under 5500 now. 9100 is community services. The Kathy Schofield. What was she responsible?
STEM?
Not STEM.
The DODEA?
No.
The foundation.
Thank you. Foundation. I knew you'd say like the foundation, which is the community. It's any of those types of activities that the school district and the community is involved with. So like the foundation, we received grants from them so that we give it out to the teachers. So that would be recorded there.
Why is there nothing for next year?
Because we don't know yet. For the community organization, we will not be doing the grants anymore. I believe it's going to be processed directly from the foundation, directly to the teachers. They're going to coordinate that activity now.
Oh, really?
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
That was what I was told when Kathy was handling it.
And she's no longer the executive director, she's no longer with us, so the superintendent will need to appoint somebody else for that.
Okay.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I guess that's a talk about the foundation for another day. I didn't
Yeah.
realize there was.
Wow.
Yeah. Part of that money comes into the district and then distributed. We were responsible for distributing those checks. So, and we had to record it as revenue and expenses so that it, the accounting, you have to have a balanced entries.
I just need to find out what the plan is for the Education Foundation.
Right, yes.
guess we all
I don't
do.
know.
Their next meeting is in August.
Excuse me?
Their next meeting will be in August. They're having a strategic planning meeting.
All right, let's move along.
Okay, the next one is the 400 object, and what I'd like to say about this one is, again, it's our utilities, energy services, and that's where, most of the expense you're seeing is in 7,900, which is the operation of plants, which is our electricity and those types of expenditures that occur in this object code.
And you budget more to be conservative? Is that because it?
Well, typically budgeting practice, if, as a result of inflation and those types of things, we do budget some more to accommodate the electricity expense if it increases or decreases, increases primarily for this one. And I believe the gas and gas is also in here, I believe, and those are the.
Yeah, I was just
things.
curious because it went from 8.2 to tentative expenditures of 7.9, and we're budgeting 9 million. And I didn't know if that was where you were talking about with Mrs. Studdard before, that you're being conservative.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, and remember, we went from 8.2, we spent 7.9, but if we go back, and I don't have it with me, if we look at what we actually started with last year with a budget, it probably would be close to the maybe the 8.2. It might have been 8.5, 8.6. And as a result, remember, as I said, as we go through the year, every month, I will bring you budget amendments, budget transfers, update to the financials to reflect what our budget was, what it is now, and you can see the movement of dollars from one category to another, and that explains why there's that gap from what you're seeing we're budgeting versus what we actually have, what we actually spent. So, okay. The next one is the 500 object code. Again, this will identify all of those 510, 520, 530. Those are the main ones, really, supplies and those types of things. I will tell you the instruction. As you can see, there's a huge increase there. I will tell you what that is. That is really a placeholder. There are dollars that are placed in there at the beginning of the year. It's the same concept as the terminal pay. What's in there is AP, ACE, IB, Industry Cert, lottery dollars. Some of those are those areas that once the state identifies the true allocation that we will receive, there are components of the allocation that we must abide by, which is, of course, to provide support in paying for the testing of those for those programs, as well as paying for bonuses, and that falls under salaries and benefits. At this point, I don't know what that is. I do know what I could preliminary receive, but I don't know where it's going to, the amount is. So basically what I've got to do is actually put it as a placeholder in this area under the 500, so I'm not inflating salaries and benefits. And then once the expense occurs, or I'm aware of what it should be, then movement of dollars is then placed in the appropriate areas and paid.
I think what you have here has answered my questions about the increase in instruction, so I don't require anything
Well, you
further.
know, if you have any others, of course, call me and I'll be happy to explain anything for you.
And we're budgeting this differently than we have in years past, correct? The ACE and IB and all that. Before
Right.
it was part of just the general fund, and now it's being set aside.
Right. Well, it is part of the general fund, but going back several years, it was not budgeted.
Right. Right.
Now I'm budgeting it.
This is
Because
much
to
easier to
expect-
follow this
Yeah,
format.
it is.
You know,
That
the
was
first
good.
page, when we looked at it, we're like, 13 million? And now we're like, okay, we're down to like one.
Right. Yeah, so it's, you know, it's just the way it appears.
What does this board 71,
That's your supplies.
What supplies?
what's it, 7910?
$7,910.
But it was 754?
$754.
And
It could be the agenda,
The
maybe
software.
the agenda plus.
We'd have to pay for this software.
Software. Well, no, that would be under the 300. I'm sorry. It's supplies. It's probably, you know, I can go back and identify specific.
I was thinking, what could that possibly be?
I know what it is because we have Mr. Daggett.
Oh, that's right.
And so his subscriptions would be under our cost center this year.
That's
coming
right.
year.
It's the supplies to support. That's right. The
Mr.
attorney's
Daggett.
budget is under the board's budget.
Whatever
That's
that law thing. That,
Thank
what is that
you.
thing called?
right. Yes.
Westlaw.
I'm sorry.
We'd rather you know. You're worth it, Mr.
This
Daggett.
is just a huge amount, and I thought, what in the
Don't
world?
apologize, it's necessary.
Okay.
Betsy, that is wonderful. You remember that?
That's lost, yeah.
All these numbers. It's like, wow. It's amazing. Yes, that's what it is, the attorney's budget.
It's all his fault. Okay,
Yeah.
got you.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to move on. The 600 again. I can explain this one as well. The capital outlay, this is all of our equipment. And again, remember, if you look at 6,500, that's the major change in this budget. You can see there's only 30,000 there. That's because we have not budgeted the digital learning, which is over $1 million. So once, as we go through the budget throughout the year, you'll see that number go up, increase. Okay. Moving on, the 700. Okay, this is the one I wanted you to get back to so I can clarify on the board's budget. If you look at the 7100 function, you'll notice that there's budgeted over $2 million sitting in that budget. But if you look at their expenses under 700, you only spent 20,400. Big difference. The reason for that is, again, that is a placeholder for the terminal pay. And then as we go through the school year, those numbers will start to decrease and salaries and benefits will start to increase. Okay. And, you know, the expenditures is about 1.1 million there. Last year I budgeted about $2.5 million, and this year we're budgeting about 2.9. It's a difference of about 419,000. But again, as we go through the exercise, there will be movement of dollars from that category to the salaries and benefits category. Okay? All right, that concludes our general fund. Now, we'll go through the debt service. We've got debt service, we've got capital outlay, and we've got the 7-Eleven fund. So I'm going to be as brief as I can, and as you have questions, by all means, ask me. Okay. Okay, our debt service funds, what I'd like to share with you on this slide is really to let you know we have about $5.2 million in debt to pay for next year. Last year we paid 5.269. This year we'll be paying 5.283. It went up slightly because of the schedule, the debt service schedule. Okay. This sheet represents the summarized version of changes in our fund balance. So basically, as you can see, we paid our debt. Our debt was about $4.6 million. We have not, again, recognized our debt service. Those numbers are still projected in here. Until I get those numbers, this will change. So again, we're expecting to pay $5.7 million in expenses, and we're expecting to have about a little fund balance of about $617. Part of that fund balance is not related to our COPS, it's related to our SBA debt that we do have. It's a book entry, but it's dollars that we still have to record. The next slide really identifies the different debt that we do have. As you can see, I just spoke of the SBE bonds. Those are the bonds that are sold and purchased on behalf of the school district through the state of Florida. So they handle those bonds for us. Racetrack bonds, those are revenue that we do receive from the highlight or the racetrack. And of course, they have the opportunity to purchase bonds on behalf of the district, and we receive the distribution from that. But the primary debt that we're responsible for are our COPS issues, of course, and we have 3 of them outstanding. Our current balance in the COPS is about 60 total. Original remaining is about $47 million. Sorry, 47, not billion, $1 million. This year we'll be paying 3.8 in principal, 1.8 in interest payment, total of 5.6. Now you know we are, last board meeting we did talk about going out for debt for refinancing. That's going to be brought to you at the next meeting. But as of right now, my budget must reflect what we currently have. This is just a summarized version of our overall debt that we do have. Again, it's $58 million total. Mrs. Stoddard, it's going down.
Hey, it's a lot better than 100 million. You know.
Every year she asks me, is that number going down?
As long as we're going in the right direction.
Okay. Okay, our next slide reflects our capital outlay. Excuse me, I have to get a drink of water. And I'm going to go through this as well very quickly. These are the three, These are the three main financing sources of our capital outlay, the 1.5 mils that we talked about earlier in the slideshow, the CONDS, and of course our PICO. And again, we are waiting for numbers, so that's just a summarized version of what it represents. This is where we are as it relates to revenue for capital projects. The local revenue, we are expecting to receive about $22 million. Last year we received about 23.5, so it's slightly going down, but that's expected. That includes our 1.5 mil in here, but that's part of the state revenue. I'm sorry. Our property taxes, tax redemption went up slightly, and of course our impact fees is about $5 million. That is a conservative number. It typically might, as you can see, we collected 6.1. We might, again, the trend is about 5.5 million, so I may be changing this number here. State revenues will receive about 1.8 million, and the reason for the reduction is, of course, the Academies of Clay that we received last year. We won't receive it this year. So here's the next slide that talks about how we're spending those dollars. This slide will match with, of course, our capital outlay ad, which it identifies how we're spending those dollars. So
Excuse me, Dr. Legaco, can we go back? Mrs. Studdard had a question for you.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Let's make sure we're on the right. Yeah, that's it. The one that says charter school capital outlay,
Yes.
what's that 145,743?
The charter school is eligible to receive some capital outlay dollars, comes directly from the state, flows through the school district, and is distributed to the charter. It is not part of our dollars, but because we are the agency that represents the charter, all dollars coming from the state must be collected through and paid out to the school.
So we're just a pass-through.
Yes, we are.
Which school did that go to?
I want to say that one is the Charter School USA, but I will verify that.
And you don't expect any this year? There's no number there?
No. I have not been told that they will be receiving any additional dollars. And yeah, I have not been told that they will.
I would imagine they would be eligible for the initial percentage. What none of our charter schools are yet eligible for is the additional.
Right. So that would just be the new charter school.
But no.
No, they aren't. They wouldn't be eligible. That others. There's two buckets.
Right.
So this is the old bucket that they've always been eligible for. It's the new bucket that, as of right now, we don't have anyone eligible, because there's that. If you go back and look at the qualifications, that one's pretty hard to qualify for.
Right. Thankfully, they're getting enough as it is.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, this is where we are expected to spend our dollars in the capital outlay funds, and it will reflect in the ad that's being advertised. And this is the summarized version of where we are expected to be at the end of, projected to be at the end of the school year. Our beginning fund balance will be about 27, revenue received 24. Our total funds are about 51. We're going to spend about 42 million. Based on that information, we'll end up at about 439,000 in our capital budget.
Is that because we're building the school?
Yes. Okay, now we're going into the federal programs. Again, the federal special revenue, which is the federal programs, represent our food and nutrition and our special revenue dollars. Bless you. The first part of it represents our food service program. Our food service program has been operating in the black. They've been self-sustaining. Of course, their revenue is about 5.1 million expected. State will be about 132. Overall, they're expected to have collect about 16.2 million in revenue. They're expected to expense out about 16.3. Those are the different areas that their expense will occur. Primarily, it's in salaries and benefits, of course, and purchase of food items. So those are the two main categories in our food. And the summary, the changes in fund balance, based on their revenue, their expenditures, and what they're rolling from the prior year in fund balance, they will end their fund balance about the same, slightly lower than what they did last year, but $3.7 million. The National School Lunch Program requires that they have at least a 2.5% to 3% of their expenses in fund balance. So they are trending with the right amount in their fund balance at this point. Okay.
The students would say spend a little more of that money and buy better food. Just passing along what I'm told.
Well, with the increase in the lunch prices, and there's probably an increase in the cost of the food too, I guess, and
right.
Everything that they had to go up after several years.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, and you can see in the revenue we did increase it slightly, so you know, so and I'm sure the Susie would have adjusted to accommodate the food prices. Right. So. All right, the next program is actually the federal programs, and this is, you know, it represents the programs that we will, again, have dollars coming in from the federal through state. The major programs are Title II, Title I, CTE, DODEA. DODEA went down slightly because, again, those grants are slowly going away. So. The 21st century and the adult, we do not have anything yet as of today. So once we receive those numbers, it will be updated with this chart. This program, you're not allowed to carry any fund balance. What happens is you receive an allocation, or you receive a notice of allocation, you expend the dollars, then you draw the funds down. That's when you receive it. You cannot draw funds down prior to expending your dollars. So this just shows you a snapshot of how they're expected to spend the dollars. Of course, it's in salaries and benefits as well, and they're impacted by the retirement rate as well. So. Tell me if I went too fast, okay? Again, like I said, they cannot carry a fund balance. Therefore, what you receive in revenue is what you're going to expend. Oh, okay. And our next fund is the 7-Eleven, which of course is our self-insurance fund. It is a fund that's within the general fund. And it provides for our property and casualty expenditures, such as our property insurance, our expenditures for workers' comp, our catastrophic medical insurance for sports program, and student accident insurance, workers' comp, crime, automobile, all of those types of liabilities that we, insurance that we must carry. This is really the revenue coming in. So what happens is, of course, this is, the charges for services, which represents the dollars coming in for those services, workers' comp, you know, the liability insurance, all of those things that's recorded in this fund. It dropped because there will not be a need to reserve an additional amount of money to ensure that the account is is actuarially sound. Because we are self-insured, the district pays its own medical bills. It pays its own liability exposure to a certain limit. But the workers' comp, it's directly your hospital bills. Whatever happens, the district is responsible. So the district has to, in order to maintain that account, we must assure the power at B's that we do have the funding to support those expenditures. So this is a summary of that fund for the last 3 years. Of course, if you can remember, going back in 15-16, it was in a deficit. And then we ended the year where it was in a positive 939,000. So for 16-17, we're expected to end the fund with about a 2.7 million. So we've restored that it's now actuarially sound. So, and I am, based on the expenditures and based on what we're projecting for workers' comp and some of the cases that we currently still have open, we're expecting to be able to support those claims and end up with about a $2.5 million. So it's still actuarially sound that we can maintain the program. And that concludes my presentation. The next steps will be, of course, to obtain the board approval to advertise the proposed millage rates that was discussed in the meeting, and of course to approve the tentative budget for 17-18. Secondly, to set the public hearing publicly that it will be on August 1st to adopt the millage rates and approve the tentative budget, and also to set the final public hearing date for September 7th, 2017, to adopt the final millage and the budget for 2017-2018. If there are no questions, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Legecko. That was very good. I like that. There are no questions. Seriously, did anybody have a question? No. Thank you. That was very good.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Before we move on to the facilities, does anybody need a break? We're good? Keep going? All right. Dr. Kemp, you're up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members, and Mr. McCauley, our acting superintendent. I want to, before we start this portion of the presentation, I want to tell you, first of all, that it is projections, it is estimates, like Dr. Legutko said, and we work closely with Business Affairs to try to make sure that our numbers balance. You'll see that our projections are a little bit different. A lot of that's because the information she just received Tuesday on millage rates, and that's why it's tentative. But I also want to let you know that our educational facilities plan is a requirement that comes in front of the board every year, and it's a 5-year plan, but we're pretty much looking at it year by year, and it's amended multiple times sometimes during the year. As you recall, we amended it last year. We made changes or Mr. Merrill brought it to you to make changes for as we amended the EFP for elementary Y to build a new school. So from time to time, it is approved annually, but we do amend it as we need to. So it really is a working document, and it's actually due to the state October 1st. So though our numbers may be a little, projections might be just a little bit different than what you've seen, it's basically because of conservative estimates that we put in place, and we'll work with Business Affairs to, by the time we get to the September 7th deadline, that our numbers will absolutely match. So
Dr. Kemp, did you bring a hard copy for the board?
For the...
Of your PowerPoint, do you have a hard copy for us?
It should have been loaded.
Well, it is loaded. I'm asking if
Yes.
you have a hard copy for us to take notes on.
We need a hard copy.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did not bring the hard copy for the board. It was loaded into the documentation, but I can work on that for you.
Okay.
For the future, we would prefer a hard copy.
Okay,
in addition to
absolutely.
that. Thank you.
Okay, so we will go on forward with the tentative copy here. So what we're going to do first, I will talk briefly. I have Mr. Fossa, our coordinator of planning and intergovernmental relations, come forward, and we will talk most about growth at first. I'll come back and talk about transportation as far as it relates to EFP, and then we'll talk about capital revenue and expenditures and some of the challenges and opportunities we face in the upcoming year. So with that said, I'll have Mr. Fossa come up.
We like to take notes.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be briefing enrollment forecast and several slides on the EFP. So if you want to take some notes, like go to page 2 or whatever, you can make them right on there as well if you'd like to. But I would like to give you a brief update as far as growth goes. Clay County is expected to grow by close to 4,500 people by the year 2023. That works out to be around 1,600 homes and about 800 students. So that is sort of where we're headed to. There we go. This first slide is actually table 1.2 on page 2 of your EFP. So if you see that now. This is just a snapshot of the entire slide. So it's not it's the entire slide. It's just the 5 years that I want you guys to look at. There you can see the growth is there. There's that 800 students that I was talking about right there, about the 3,500 or 35,190 all the way over to 35,090. That's about 800 students. And interestingly enough, that growth is really between junior high and high school kids.
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear what you were saying.
sorry.
I'm trying to find it on this computer still. So I'm on page 2.
Page 2, and this is just a snapshot of that entire chart that you're looking at. I just took that 5 years. Not seeing it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. And if you look at, this is the year that we're in here now, which is 35,190, and then in 5 years we're looking at about 35,990. That's that 800 that the state says that we would be increasing. And like I said, interesting enough, of that 800, most of them are high school and junior high, with elementary remaining steady or actually slightly decreasing. And it will be turning up at the end of the 5 year to 6 to 10 year point. The elementary school is going to start jumping up a little bit from there. Now, where is most of this growth happening? Most of this growth is actually happening in the Oakleaf-Tynes area, of course. And so we've been tracking the building permits that have been coming in. I oversee all of the impact fees, so I track all the building permits coming in. And just to let you know, in the past 8 months, the Oakleaf-Tynes area has had about 160 building permits. That's about 20 per month. Lake Asbury has had close to 100, which is about 12 per month. And then Fleming Island had about 50, which is about 6 per month. So you can see where the growth is really in the Oakleaf-Tynes area. Okay. We do have capacity issues in Oakleaf area, and that's why we're building School Y at this particular time.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
How
ma'am.
do they determine that it's going to be junior high, high school?
Well, if you look,
Is there a calculation of some sort that?
I'm sorry. There's a bubble in here, and you can see that bubble is sitting around the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and that bubble kind of trains all the way down, and that's sort of how they look at that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Okay.
So the decisions will be, from what I'm hearing you say, the decisions over the next 4 to 5 years will be what we do with our junior high and high school in the Oakleaf area.
Correct. Which will be, a lot of that will be fixed with School Y.
But that will be adding an elementary school,
Correct.
not a junior high or high school, unless there's
It's going to
changes made
relieve the
in
junior
the
high because the
junior high.
6th grade is going to leave the junior high and go back down, so it's going to give
But then what
capacity.
happens with the high school?
We have
No,
capacity.
So it's basically, it's coming in at such a rate
Right.
that we'll be able to handle that.
And high school is a little difficult to nail down because of all the academies, and there's a lot of movement back and forth. There's a lot of capacity at Clay. There's a lot of capacity at Orange Park, and there's a lot of capacity at Ridgeview. So numbers-wise, we could handle that growth.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, though? And maybe I'm jumping ahead of you, but scrolling down, when you give us the acreages, which I've never seen before, and maybe it's been in the plan before and I just didn't read it as closely, but Elementary Y is 63 acres.
Elementary Y is 63 acres, but 33 1/3 are buildable.
Okay,
So, yeah, these-
But that still does allow a little bit of extra space that if we needed to, when y'all have talked before about possible K through 8 or something like that, we could.
That 33 acres is a pretty large area. I mean, if you
Okay.
consider Doctor's Inn, which I think is sitting on 19 or something like that, there's a lot of land there.
The reason I'm asking you is because I see that Plantation Oaks Elementary is only 37 acres. And, you know, last year when we had capacity issues there, they said there really isn't room to go anywhere. So I guess I'm trying to visualize in my head what the footprint looks like and what is actually sounds like a lot of land, but it's not a lot of land.
Right. And I'm going to go ahead and address that with another slide in a moment. But
Thank you.
The goal is obviously to open school-wide with no portables at that time. This is the next slide. This is your page, should be page 7 in the EFP. And it's table 1.3.1, proposed new schools. I apologize for the fact that it doesn't seem to fit on this screen so well. This is broken down into 3 different intervals, as you see. The first interval is 1 to 5 years, and you can see we have no proposed, I'm sorry. Yes.
What page is
Nobody
it?
ever hears me.
It was down for Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
Legecko, so we're having trouble hearing you clearly. Thank you.
This slide is broken down into 3 intervals, and you can see the first interval right here is the 1 through 5 years, which we're looking at right now. And there are no proposed schools being built in here, and that's because we're building School Y. The next interval goes out from 6 to 10, and you can see that we're looking at this elementary school here at the Two Creeks area, as well as one down in the Green Cove Springs area. And the projections definitely do support that growth. They're looking at about 1,300 students in that 10-year time frame. Divide by 2, that would give you your 2 schools. And then the final interview goes out to 20 years. And this is a big question mark. I don't have my crystal ball with me, but it really, a lot of it hinges on the Saratoga Springs DRI, the Development of Regional Impact, if that gets built or not.
And what about the property on Fleming Island that we have for junior high?
That property is there. We definitely own that property. What's the question on that?
But I mean, well, it'll be after we're all off the board, so.
Yes, ma'am.
You're way out.
Right. And this is an actual graphical representation of the new schools or the schools proposed. And you can see up here, this is the one that we're looking in the Two Creeks area. That's elementary A, a little bit to the west of Challenger and Discovery. And then down below here, this is where that DRI we're looking at here with elementary or junior high QQ and elementary B and R may go. And Ms. Study, you're right, but if we're looking at that other piece of property on Fleming Island, it's right about there.
Just above the compass.
Oh, I know where the school.
Oh, I know. He was showing us on the map.
MAP should be on page
Above the
8.
compass.
I know where it is.
I'm sorry, page 8. Yes, ma'am. If we go to page 10, this will be our next slide. Now, this is the COFTI numbers that we were looking at first, but broken down by school. So we're looking at the state numbers that is broken down by individual school. You'll notice that School Y is not on here. School Y is not in here. The state just came out with their final COFTI numbers last week. They were late. They came out in July. I talked with Mr. Gene Tanner. He's with the DOE forecaster out there. And the School Y has not been loaded into the Florida Inventory of Schoolhouses yet, the FISH document. So it does. We don't show it there. But they're not going to revisit these numbers again until next year, is what they had said. But if you look, with the completion of School Y, OVE, Poe, and Oakleaf Junior will definitely change. And again, I apologize that this slide is not fitting on here, because if we look at, let's see. Oh, gotcha, right. Okay.
We now have a paper.
Well, I can't see because I'm looking for my arrows and they're not there. Sorry about that. I'm tracking. So here would be your Plantation Oaks, and you can see that those numbers are jumping up quite a bit for the next 5 years. And the same thing with OVE. They're going up quite a bit. The next slide just shows you the junior high, and you can see.
Would you refresh our memory on the acronym for COFTE?
COFTE is Capital Outlay for Full-Time Equivalent.
Okay, and how does that differ from our fish numbers?
The fish numbers, that's just the size of the school that gets put in there.
Not always, right? Isn't some
Not
of it-
always. There's two different numbers, right? One could be the size of the school by classroom, and the other one could be the size of the room by the cafeteria.
Okay.
Right. So if you're looking at Middleburg High School, they're limited by the size of the cafeteria.
Right.
Even though
Middleburg,
there's
whatever
capacity
it was.
there classroom-wise, the cafeteria just can't handle them. And we have several schools
When we
that are like
converted
that.
Ridgeview from a junior high to a senior high, we had to go in and expand big
Right.
time.
Well, and
Yes,
that's the
ma'am.
problem with Doctors Inlet Elementary and Keystone Elementary.
Correct.
Cafeterias are
Yes.
needing.
The building size could handle the students. It's the cafeteria issue right now. Yes,
I'm not sure at Keystone Elementary you could handle any more students either.
Not
Will
with the parking
elementary Y
situation.
alleviate the crowding issue at Tynes?
Elementary Y, we're looking at that right now. Mr. Jim Connell I've been talking with him a little bit lately, and there's a new area called the Armstrong DRI, and it's just a little south, you know where the Publix is up there? Just a little south. There's a big rectangle piece of land that they're going to be putting 1,000 homes in there.
Now, tell me where that is.
It's on Plantation Oaks Boulevard. Do you know where the Publix is?
Right.
Right below there, there's a large rectangular piece of land.
Like
It's
you're
the
going down going
It's
south.
just south. If you were standing at Publix and looking south, that all those trees you see is right there.
Really?
It's 1,000 homes that are going in there. Now, that originally is zoned for Tynes, but you can step out on the sidewalk and look at the new school. So we need to
Is
remove that.
Tynes, is that a cafeteria issue or is that a?
No, not a cafeteria issue there. And there's a lot of land at Tynes, so eventually wanted to add a new wing or something like that, we could probably do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, wait, didn't you have a school dot up near there?
But that's not for another 5 to 10 years.
Right, that would be needed probably out in the 7 to 10 year point. There's a piece of land out there that's off of Tynes Boulevard.
But we're sitting at 104% capacity at Tynes this coming school year.
But remember, as the COFTE numbers show, our elementary schools are actually declining.
Right.
That's
We'll be
amazing
okay
to
for
me.
a little while.
Do you not, this formula where like if they were projecting, 10,000 people, you're going to have, 2.5 elementary and
Yes, ma'am. It's
1
broken out like that. So if you were to, we look at it by houses, and so it's like it's 0.488 students per home. And then from there, it's broken into like 0.28 elementary schools, 0.16 for the junior highs, and it's like 0.18 for the high school kids.
wicked.
It is. I've talked to the people down in Orlando. I talked to that district down there, and they use the same numbers. So
And do you use the same numbers for apartments as you do single-family homes?
the apartments actually are a little less.
They have
But
less children?
They have less children at the apartments, yeah, according to the data. Because a lot of people that are, they may be professionals that are just single professionals that are living in there, not so much a family living in apartments.
I don't think that's the case in Oakleaf, because that area where those apartments were supposed to be homes, and when that came and they built it as apartments, that's when we started.
Build up with kids.
Build up with kids.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And we are looking at those calculations. I think when I was talking with John Merrill, he said, man, you might want to look at those again.
Yeah.
And those numbers are a little bit higher up there for that.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fosso, do these utilization numbers for 17, 18 reflect our open enrollment
They do not.
students? Okay, so these
But
percentages,
those though they do not, you're right.
okay, so then they could go up, those
This is
schools that we advertised space
Yes.
at.
This document is very, very fluid.
Okay.
And it almost changes, actually, once a quarter, I like to go in and readjust
Right.
it.
Okay.
And we had seen that earlier, because we remember you had held those up, and those numbers do change.
Okay.
I want to keep it as close to real time as possible without doing it every day.
It's like, you
Yes,
just
ma'am.
got to stay with it, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
And this this document, I mean, every year, it's a new animal, you know,
I also
Things-
think it's
things
important.
happen. People
I also
build
think it's
houses.
important to note that the utilization rates are going to completely change as we redistrict for elementary Y. So as we look at this next coming school year, all these numbers talk about fluidity. All these numbers will change, and all the utilization rates will change as a
Right.
result of the work we're going to have to do to redistrict.
right.
That's you, boss. But I'm going to back out. I'm almost done. Sorry, boss. I just have a summary real quick. For the next 5 years shows the growth, and with the addition of new school Y redistricting efforts, we will be able to meet the demands and expectations of this growth. With the exception of any questions, this does conclude my brief.
No, very good, thank you. Did anybody have questions for Mr. Fossa? No, thank you, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll briefly go into transportation. And as you may recall, Mr. Merrill last year came to us, talked about the schedule for replacement of buses, and part of our EFP is looking at transportation and buses. As you can see in 17-18, that we actually had, planned to be on a 10% kind of replacement schedule for buses for both ESE and regular bus management. Last year, Mr. Merrill also presented that, we haven't been able to do that every year due to the funding issues and things of that nature. So in 17-18, we will not be purchasing 8 replacement buses for ESE. After speaking with Mr. Fitzpatrick, we're going to be okay for another year. To hold that off as we build elementary Y, and that's additional revenue that we can utilize to make sure that we build elementary Y on time and on budget. So also holds true for our regular bus management plan as well. We try to replace 19 and delete 19 every year. Some of you might be wondering about air conditioning on buses. We were able to, in our last order of 19 regular buses, we were able to retrofit those for air conditioning. We were also able to budget to retrofit 19 more, so 38 total buses to our fleet that are ages 2012 or newer will be actually retrofitted with air conditioning. Our ESE buses have always had air conditioning, so as we move forward with the transportation plan, we will not be purchasing buses in 17-18, but we will get back on that track for replacement and deleting things out of the fleet in 18-19.
Dr. Kemp, I have a question on that.
Yes.
And I'm not sure what we're using as our guide, but I remember when I first got on the board, the buses had a 10-year lifespan. Mrs. Stutter, do you remember? And then it changed, and they decided that they would go longer than the 10 years, go to 12, something like that. Do you remember that?
No, we just,
Do we follow that?
It's still a 10-year lifespan.
still
Mr.
10-year
Fitzpatrick,
lifespan.
you want to elaborate? I mean, that's a great opportunity for me to learn too.
so are you, on the air conditioning, is this all the buses that are in the age range?
2012. yes,
Will
ma'am.
they all be, will all of them be air conditioned, or how many more do we have in that age range that we would still need to try to get air conditioning on?
Okay, so keep in mind, this question came up at a prior board meeting, we have to look at the return on investment of the cost to retrofit the buses based on how much longer they'll be in service.
We had in here 212 to
Right.
2016 model.
Right.
Of those, is what I'm asking, is this all of them then, or are there more that fall in that range that we would still need to get air conditioning on?
Now, we looked at our buses from 2012 up, and you can confirm, Mr.
Correct, yeah.
So all the buses that are at least 2012 or newer
Right.
are going to have air conditioning on them?
Correct. Correct. Yeah, all
Cool.
yeah,
And
correct.
how many buses does that leave? Cool, that was apropos. How many buses, regular, not ESE, how many regular buses then will we have on the road that will not have air conditioning?
Roughly 80 to 90, right in that area. But if you retroed them back, like the 2011 model buses have the average of about 140,000 miles on them already.
Well, I mean, like you said, you've got to
Yes.
weigh it, and
Yeah,
and I can understand that. I was just wondering how many more we had out there but as we
Too many.
eventually buy
Too
new
many.
buses, we'll gradually solve it, but maybe
Right.
not in our.
Didn't Dr. Kemp just say we only have 38 regular buses that have AC on them? Or do we have more than that? 'Cause
They're adding these.
No, we're retrofitting 38 total. I mean, we've done 19 already of the brand new buses that were coming, and they retrofitted those back, and now we're going to retrofit another 19. Right. We have a total of
So
like
30.
around 260 total buses completely, and like 73 of them are ESE buses.
Right.
You know,
Well, we're
those
heading in
already
the right
amazing.
direction.
So the question is for the regular buses, not the ESC, but the
You
regular.
said the ESC are all air conditioned.
Right. So there's 50 left of the regular buses that
80.
do not have AC?
50 to 80.
He said 80.
No, exactly right now, but yeah, around 50 to 80, right in that area.
So the bus
We'll
drivers just
still
all
be-
try to get on the air-conditioned buses?
Oh, well, yeah.
How do you,
We're
is
doing
there
it
a
by
lottery as
seniority.
to who gets the
Seniority.
air-conditioned buses?
Absolutely, seniority. So, the more senior drivers will get those.
How about that?
And keep in mind, as we purchase buses, when we get back on our purchase schedule, each bus is going to come with air conditioning. We're going
Yeah,
to be part of the
right.
build.
Oh, for sure.
From that point forward.
Good.
So. Any other questions on transportation portion of that?
Any questions for Mr. Fitzpatrick? No. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go into briefly talking about some of the things that Dr. Legutko talked about. Once again, the numbers, we're working with her, the numbers change. If you want to go into your EFP plan, if you go to actually page 19, that's the chart I'll look at with you. Page 19 of the plan, it's table 3.1, and it's projected new revenue. I just wanted to go over some of the revenue sources that we deal with capital programs. As you can see, the total projected revenue with all of the sources that we have for revenue is about $24,052,675. So when you take a look at that figure right there, that's where we start. So we start with 24 million. When we start looking at the uses of these funds, if we start from top to the bottom, LCIF, that's the 1.5 mil money. So that represents $15 million of that. Notice that PICO new construction is zero. We continually lose PICO new construction dollars. It just doesn't exist anymore, and it kind of puts us in a challenge as far as maintaining facilities and services. Dr. Legutko mentioned capital outlay and debt services figure. We still don't have that number for the state, but we do have an estimated number there at $496,000. That can be used for growth as long as it's in our school plant survey. So we go into that in the actual EFP that it kind of breaks down each one of these revenue streams for you. We get PICO maintenance for repair, maintenance, and renovation. That's been averaging about $1.3 million a year. Now that sounds like a lot of money, 1.3 million, and it is a lot of money, but when you take that and you divide it by 41 schools plus 9 other ancillary facilities to try to maintain, it comes out to be about $26,000 average per school to try to maintain our facilities. And that presents a challenge when it comes to maintenance, renovation, and repair. So that $1.3 million represents the dollars we get every year for basic maintenance, basic repair, and renovations. So therein lies the challenge. As we've lost additional funding from the state, we've also been challenged to work the best we can within the limited funds for repair and maintenance on that particular item. So 1.3 million with that.
Dr. Kemp.
Yes.
Why did you go back on the year 2021, 2022 on the PICO maintenance? It's not a biggie. I'm just curious as to why you decided in that year it was going to go down.
The 21, 22, those are just projected estimates out based on, those are just placeholders, Ms. Stoddard. Those are projected estimates.
I just wondered because the box before, you still had it, the 1.3, and I thought, that's strange. He's got a crystal ball way out in 20.
If I had a crystal ball, we'd be doing some great things. And but it averages about $1.3 million, but the further we go out, we're kind of anticipating a little less and less every year, but it all depends. It all depends on the PICO maintenance, and it all depends on what the state generates from the tax receipts. So we've been averaging $1.3 million in PICO maintenance repair. So When you take a look at that figure and you divide that up amongst trying to support 41 schools and 9 facilities, it's a challenge. Impact fees, we've talked about. Impact fees, these streams are very restricted. We can only use them for certain things. Impact fees can only be used for new growth. And you see we have $5.5 million. Our estimate's $5.5 million projected. Actually, last year ended up to be right a little less than $6 million. And Dr. Legutko mentioned in her presentation that she had it estimated at $5 million, and those are numbers that we'll tweak as we submit the final plan. But on average, we estimate $5.5 million of that, and all of that funding is going to go towards building new growth in Elementary Y.
Don't we also use some of that money for debt service?
Yes, we use some of that money for debt service as well. This year, we're using all of that money for Elementary Y, and we'll be looking at LCIF for debt service. And by the way, Elementary Y is a combination of impact fees and LCIF, and I'll talk about that in just one second. We also have the BCC sales surtax. That is somewhat of it's kind of an in and out, it's kind of a pass-through. That is that we get 0.08 of 1 cent out of the BCC's tax. That equates to $1.7 million, and in the interlocal agreement, it pretty much goes to Mr. McCauley and Mr. Bunkley for technology to support our schools. But out of the penny, so if you think about 0.0881, or let's even round it up, we talk about 0.09. Okay,
I thought we were supposed to get 0.5 or.
I thought it
No,
was
ma'am.
0.10. I thought it was 1/10
or
of
10% or 5%. I can't
Less than-
remember, but it wasn't this.
10% of 1. So what we end up getting, if you take that 0.0881 and you look at the actual 1 cent collection, it ends up being approximately, and these are estimates, it's about $1.7 million a year that we go straight for technology that comes from the BCC. So think about a penny, and think about 2% of a penny. And that's the portion that the county gets from the BCC sales surtax, and that 1.7 million goes to support directly to support technology for the schools.
I knew it went to technology, but that percentage sounds weird.
It's and that's when you think about 1 cent generation, a 1 cent sales tax generation in Clay County. I just got this from Ford Associates because we're doing some research. Generates about $23 million a year. So. When you take that 0.0881 and just plug that in, you'll see that it equals $1.7 million a year. That's approximately what we're receiving for technology. So that is somewhat, it comes into us and out right directly to our technology. So that money, I guess my point is that money is really not used for facility upgrades, renovation, other than infrastructure, things that Mr. Bunkley might be using to help with Wi-Fi infrastructure and things of that nature. I can tell you it's not enough. I mean, bottom line, I can tell you it's not enough. Every little bit helps, but $1.7 million in facilities, construction, and technology, switches, infrastructure, it doesn't go very far. Sounds like a lot of money, but it doesn't.
But I do think it's significant that $7.2 million of our revenue we do not control. At the stroke of a vote, if you will, the BCC could take away $7.2 million from the school district, which I don't know that the public recognizes that is significant, No, the 5.5, they control the impact fees as well. They have to approve the impact fees.
But they're a pass-through.
They are, but
they could choose not to.
Impact fees are very important for us because we count on that impact fee for projected revenue. Like I said, we know just from experience and forecasting and what Dr. Legutko and her team's been able to help us with, we know we get right under, based on the number of houses and permits that are being built and things of that nature, we're right under $6 million this year that we actually collect. We estimate conservatively because we don't want to have too many we don't want to put too many projects out there and pull them back. We'd rather have more money coming in and make adjustments at the end. But you're right, impact fees are important to us, and there's some discussion regarding right now about changing the collection fee and the revenue schedules and the PCC's decision. It is their decision. My concern during Elementary Y is that we are counting on those projections for the revenue as we build Elementary Y. Happy to work with the BCC and builders in 1819, but we were counting on every dollar in the revenue stream for our facilities, our new growth. So let's talk briefly about the gas tax. The gas tax is also a very limited revenue stream. The gas tax can only be used for road service, road improvements, sidewalks, markings up to our property that we own. So we actually have done a good job. I want to commend Mr. Merrill, the team, and the business affairs team over the years saving impact fees. Once again, impact can only be used for growth. The sales surge tax is a pass-through. Gas tax, the 46.5, and the gas can only be used for specific purposes. It can't be used however we want to use it. So we've done a good job saving those funds, rolling those funds forward to be able to put ourselves in a position to build a new school without having to do another bond or debt service, increase our debt service. So that is that's a big plus for us this year, and we're excited. We've got 49 weeks to go, and we'll be ready for that. So we start out with 24 million. Keep a eye on that figure right there, because the next chart, it's gonna break some things down a little more. So if you look at page 20, okay, if you look at page 20, I said before that we pretty much end up with the only revenue source we have to operate with for facilities renovation and really construction. LCIF, the local capital improvement funds. I had estimated 15 million. The good news is on Tuesday, it appears that it's going to be around 16, so we'll get to make adjustments and bring some projects back in. But out of that $15 million, what we have to do, we have to repay debt service. So if you take a look at that 2017-18 column, 2017-18 column, you see we pay roughly $5.2 million in debt service to pay off debt for previous schools. We also have district-wide support. We also pull another $550,000 out of LCIF to support the ERP system and equipment district-wide. That $300,000 for equipment district-wide, I also have to commend Business Service for working with us, because in the past, that number has gotten as high as $3.4 million being reclassed, which is it's what happens when we have, it's an unintended consequences of decisions that are being made. We'll talk more about that in a minute. $550,000 in equipment district-wide to include ERP system support. And all of these things, by the way, are in the ad, are being advertised for trim. We also, out of that LCIF, we also play property and casualty and provide support for the district on that. It's approximately $1,036,000 is the estimate for property and casualty insurance, comes out of that. District-wide technology, once again, that's the BCC surtax. That's just kind of a pass-through, the $1.7 million there that goes to technology. We pay maintenance department salaries, and that salaries that are required, and there's more than just that in there. Salaries and some supplies, equipment the $2.5 million there to support the facilities of Clay County District Schools. That's part of the reclassification. Also salaries for facility planning and construction, as well as our project manager salaries. And over time, as funding sources have dwindled for us as far as supporting facilities, not only have the funding sources dwindled, we've also had to make tough decisions with reduction of staff. So, Bryce Ellis is here this evening, and, Bryce is our project manager for the district. But Bryce, when you see that project list that was provided to you in your detail, Bryce has to manage every one of those projects by herself. So we've kind of, the funding situation over the last decade in Clay has kind of put us in a position where we're one deep. We're one deep in support as far as capacity of people. You've heard me talk about that before. But $140,000 of facility planning construction salaries is also part of the LCIF. The transportation department, notice there is no expenditure. We normally spend about $3 million a year on purchasing buses, and we won't be doing that this year to make sure that we have what we need to open elementary and support schools. So you take a look at those expenditures right there, another $548,000 when you talk about air conditioning and retrofitting the ACs on the buses, as well as the GPS system. I do want to point out there that you see a 273,888 figure there. We have been working with Synovia. Mr. Fitzpatrick and I have worked diligently with the CEO of Synovia, who we did not pay the year one payment. That was until we're happy. They are working with us, and they are we're actually replacing all the tablets to a different brand. They've also agreed to provide turn-by-turn directions to all the buses, provide additional training, and also agreed to credit us for ridership and attendance, time and attendance, credit us $5 per module for that until such time we're ready to implement that. So Synovia has worked with us, and we are continue to work through those issues. Is that correct, Mr. Fitzpatrick? So as a result of that, they delayed the payment. We had the first payment was due July 1st, and I wasn't happy. And since I wasn't happy and we weren't where we wanted to be, they've worked with us, and they've delayed that until such time they're proving the solution's working.
This shows 6 years. Our contract was 5 years.
Yes, that
And
one.
Are we assuming that there will be a GPS system following this after 5 years?
Yes, there will be some cost, license costs and things of that nature to maintain software and software upgrades. That 6 years is just a placeholder projected. Once again, just like Dr. Legutko's figures, every year we have to put the 5-year plan together with facilities plan as well. We really focus on 1 year at a time, and we're going to come back and amend. And as the numbers change, every time a dollar changes in our funding availability, it makes us change every project, so we will balance to the T.
Dr. Kemp, let me ask you a question
Sure.
about this GPS, because I'm trying to remember what the exact number was. Was it 580, 540? And even if you just take the 5 years, the first year was rolled into the next 4 years. So it was going to be a payment of 130 a year,
Yeah, I thought it was.
So where are you getting these numbers? Because this is a lot more than what our contract was for.
The first annual payment was for $136,944, and it was actually, they took 5 years worth of payments and divided it amongst 4 years.
Right.
And
So
we did
this
not
is a lot
pay,
more, but you
we
had
did
to
not
do
pay the first year.
We weren't supposed to.
Right. Well, it was not supposed to be, we weren't going to be paying for it up front.
Right.
We were going to pay for it.
Added
right.
into the next 4 years of $136,000 a year.
That's correct. We did not pay the July 1st payment, so I had just budgeted, I have budgeted to pay the 2 years payment when we're happy, when we're problem with the
You
solution.
have an extra $136,000 in here as well.
Yes, ma'am. The last one is just a placeholder.
No, I'm not talking about the last one. I'm talking about 2017, 18, 18, 19. It's too many. It's too much here.
Okay, it's an estimate, and we can tweak.
No, it's not an estimate, it's a contract.
No,
that
yes,
has
ma'am, I
an
understand.
exact amount over the 5 years. First year was 0.
Correct.
And each year was $136,000 after that, correct?
I think what he's trying to explain is we're paying what we were supposed to pay July 1, which would have been last fiscal year. We're paying it this fiscal year.
Right, but we weren't
So there'll be
supposed to pay
2.
last fiscal year. The first year was rolled into the other 4. So instead of taking that 530 and dividing it by 5 years, it was divided by 4 years. First year, no payment. Second year, a payment. Third year, a payment. Fourth year, a payment. Fifth year, a payment. There's too many payments here. That's what I'm
Correct.
saying.
Right, and I'll make that.
Somebody needs to go back and look
I'll
at
make
that,
I'll
because
make that
that's not
adjustment on that. There's because of the delay and the funding for that, not the funding, but the delay in the payment of that, and us working with them. All that's been put on hold anyway, pending the fact until Mr. Fitzpatrick says to me that he's good to go with it, and that our bus drivers, our committee that's working on that is happy. And if we're not happy,
I don't know about the rest of you.
right?
But they're not happy. I do have another question before you move on.
Yes, ma'am.
I would have liked to see in the 2016-17 year total for the revenue and a total for the expenditures, and I'm wondering if you have those numbers, because I'd like to see if it was less or more than what the 17-18 and on forward is from there. Do you by any chance know those numbers?
I don't have them right with, but I can get that for you. This is a 5-year plan that starts with 17-18.
Right.
And we actually have that. We're required to report those expenditures, and we'll actually I'll provide that to you. The 5-year plan starts with 17-18. That's what we're talking about next year.
Right. Well, if you could just send that to each of us so that,
I'm
just
happy to do
email it
that.
to us.
Not a problem. So out of the 15, so if you think about the LCIF funding of $15 million, that's our primary funding source, and we start adding up all of where that goes to support the district and what we're trying to do. There's a figure on the bottom of that. It says 11.7 million of that 15 kind of goes towards that, but 1.7 is the pass-through. So when you take a look at this last slide, which I thought might help you if you just want to look on the screen, and I'll make sure I provide it to you. But the last slide, when you take that estimated new revenue and you look at $24 million that we projected in total revenue, and you look at the capital outlay expenditures of $11.7 million, the total available funds for capital expenditures runs approximately about $12.2 million after that. Once again, but out of that money, 5.5 is restricted to growth. 46.5 is restricted with a gas tax, which can only be used for road improvement adjacent to schools. PICO special maintenance, we have $1.2 million, and I just put a figure out to the side there to show you that $1.2 million is $25,921 of maintenance support per school, barring we have no system failures, ACs. You guys have seen come before you, all of you have seen come before you, air conditioner repairs. I mean, just for example, 3 air conditioner replacements at Wilkerson Junior High on just 3 buildings runs close to $500,000. You know from experience of working with the items that have come before you, architectural fees and engineering fees are rarely, less than $50,000 when we're talking about projects over $500,000. So that's the money that's available for us on average, if you want to look at that. So the total available for construction for 17-18 this year is going to be about $5.4 million. So that's going to be about $109,000 available per facility on average. And the reason it's 5.4 again is, once again, we did not do the $3 million bus purchase. On average, operations has ended up with anywhere between 2.5 to $3 million a year to provide facility support on. So when you think about that, I just wanted to break that out to kind of show you what that means. So $2.4 million. If we would have purchased buses, we'd have had $2.4 million to operate, try to provide support for facilities. That's $49,000 per facility, and that's barring no system failures. We're working hard with the educational facilities plan to make sure that we put some priority and equity. Oldest schools first, mechanical systems, the age of our systems. We've got some challenged facilities, and a lot of it's just due to age. And we're looking at highest and best use. How are we using the property? How is the best way to invest in these facilities to get the most return on our investment? So, I've had the opportunity to tour a lot of our facilities, and we have some challenges. But our team works hard with the educational facilities plan to look at priorities. Of course, HVAC consumes a lot of our time. HVAC systems, age of mechanical, roofing occupies a lot of our special maintenance, roofing, HVAC, as well as the little projects that we're trying to do to enhance: kitchen replacements, kitchen upgrades, floor upgrades, parking lot renovations to help traffic and congestion. So the opportunity is we have a challenge, and the challenge is we have to continue to find ways to get new revenue. So when you take a look at this, though it says, gosh, it looks like we have $15 million in LCIF. When we look at the practice of what we've had to do to make things work in Clay, we end up with very little to provide support. But that doesn't mean we can't fix it. So over time, so there's some reasons we need to. I think that we need to help create new revenue, and as part of the educational facilities plan, that's it. I mean, we're at a point in our system where we need to look at ways to create. We didn't raise impact fees as recommended. That was a decision the board and superintendent recommended not to do that, as well as we're not recommending an increase in millage rate. We have a 0.08 of 1 cent from BCC surtax. Our state funding streams for facilities are kind of diminishing. We will have some capital outlay implications for a House Bill 7069 that will further reduce our funds as charter schools become eligible for that funding and meet all those restrictions that Ms. Condon was talking about. But if we're going to continue to be competitive and relevant and provide the best facilities and provide best for our students, we need to look at ways of creating new revenues. So we take the dollars that we have and we prioritize with the project managers, the engineers, our lead techs in the field, and we take the dollars we have, and every year we build that out in the EFP. Sometimes a change in funding like we just got from Tuesday from Dr. Legutko, the millage rate's going to actually go up, so that gives us an opportunity to move 18-19 projects back into 17-18. So our team works hard. I have to commend our team, Mr. Fossa with the growth, and our project manager, Michelle Todd, Donna Mitchum, who just retired, and helping us put all this together, Becky Smith, because we have to do a lot with a little. And I appreciate everybody's patience, especially our principals in schools. They're understanding. They're starting to see, okay, here's the challenges we face. But we can work better. We can work better, more efficient, and as we find new ways as an organization to get additional revenue, we're going to be able to put our facilities in a position to compete. And that's our goal. Everything works every day. That would be the goal. Everything works every day. So with that said, any questions?
I would like to ask for the last 2 slides to be sent to the board. That's not in our packet.
Okay, sure.
We would like, that one especially. Any questions of Dr. Kemp? No, thank you very much.
I do want to make one comment and let you know that I did forward that to you already when I went back to my seat. So you actually have it in your email. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
We, just for future, when you have a PowerPoint, we'd like a hard copy of everything that you're talking about so we can take notes.
Not a problem. That's noted, and that won't happen again.
Thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda is, this is our only action item. We'll need to advertise for the 2017-18 tentative budget and millage. And on our computer to the right is the exact wording for the motion. So I'll entertain a motion to authorize publication of legal notice and advertisement of public hearing to be held on August 1st, 2017 at 5:01 p.m. on the proposed millage rates and the tentative budget in accordance with section 200.0652310 and 1011.71 and 1011.03 of the Florida statute.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Gilhousen, a second by Ms. Bola. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. At this time, we have no cards, so there's no presentation from our audience. Superintendent comments. Mr. McCauley, would you like to? No comment?
Madam Chair, when I vote, it says I'm not present. But I'm here, and I paid attention.
I'm having the same. You know what? We're not going to play with it. Ms. Bush, just show that we've all voted yes. We're not. This happened the other night, last month, and it's.
Oh, it doesn't even come up.
It's embarrassing that it doesn't work.
It doesn't even come up.
So our next item.
Vote again after I mark you present.
Marcus present. Marcus, I'll have voting yes. So Mr. McCauley had no comments.
We weren't here.
Yeah.
Did yours come up?
Yes, it comes up.
This is crazy that this does this. Any school board comments? Ms. Gilhousen?
I had none.
Ms. Bola? Ms. Condon?
None.
Wait.
Ms. Studdard?
No, thank you.
And none for me, so with that, we'll adjourn our meeting. Thank you.
I voted there.